You know, during the War for Independence, there were many people who were fascinated by the experiment that was becoming American democracy, and some of those observers were British. Well, now flash forward 270 years about, and we have another Brit observer of American democracy during this most tumultuous year. Welcome to Chris Behan.
Hi, David.
And I'm sorry I botched the pronunciation of your name before. I mean, I've just been called you Chris. We've met before, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, you have done something that I've never heard of having been done before.
That's right.
Not only did you drive around the United States, you brought the car from England.
I did.
Here.
Yes.
How did you do that, and how did you deal with the steering wheel being on the wrong side?
Well, I grew up learning to drive on the correct side of the car. So it's
What do you mean by correct? Our way or your way?
Well, we call it right-hand drive. I'm only kidding. I actually have a left-hand drive car at home, so it's a little ironic. I do everything a bit backwards. But yeah, I brought the car with me because I was going to be in the US for most of the year, which has been eye-opening in itself, given the recent election.
Yeah.
But because I was going to be here for so long, it worked out more cost-effective to bring a car with me than to rent one or even to buy one, because the red tape and bureaucracy that goes with trying to buy a car as a non-American citizen is just such a headache.
Right.
It's easier to bring a car.
So did you come over with, I mean, obviously a ship, I mean, right?
Well, I came on the plane.
Yeah.
The car went on the ship. But I have had people ask me, how did you get this car here? And I have told them that they had to wait for the Atlantic to freeze and stuff. And amazingly, some people believe me.
Yeah.
And take a lot of gas, you know. But yeah, I put it on a boat, and it was here 3 weeks later. I picked it up from Georgia, and I was hanging out in South Florida for the first 3 months.
So tell me your itinerary. When did it start and when did it end?
So it began in January. I picked the car up in February, but I came to Florida to hang out with some friends from January through to April.
Of 2016, this
2016,
year.
that's correct, yeah. So in that, and I think at that time, Trump had just done his whole Mexican wall comment, and it all went bang. So I brought the car then and brought it down to South Florida, and I was very excited to have, as a massive petrol head, I think that's a gear head in American.
That's okay, I speak Brit, that's all right.
Oh, good, that's good, because I'm having trouble with Americans sometimes.
Yeah.
But I had to bring a car with me because it was kind of a novelty in itself, but also had to have a car to get around Florida. You can't get around Florida without a car. So that's where the trip sort of started, and I was going to be working up in Pennsylvania for a summer camp. So I had to drive from Miami, which is where I was staying, up to Pennsylvania, and I went and saw friends on the way. I did a very famous bit of road called the Dragon's Tail, which is, you know, massive in the automotive industry, and, you know, gearheads alike. And then I drove to see friends in Maryland, and then up to Pennsylvania. And then once I'd finished camp, I thought, well, where do I go now? Because I've got this time to travel. I have friends in Canada, so I was going to get another 3 months tourist entry once I exited Canada again.
Right.
So I drove to San Francisco via Boston and Canada.
That's not the usual direct way.
It's not the usual way. No, that's correct. But you know, my family were flying over to see family there anyway.
Right.
And I was already on the East Coast, and they were in Ontario.
Right.
So that's
well, I understand we actually have some footage.
Yes, that's
of
right.
this.
Yeah, I've been doing a documentary. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to take a look at this. I see a bright career as a filmmaker for you. A unique perspective on the United States during a unique year by Chris Behan. Let's take a look. You know, this is great stuff. I mean, what gave you the crazy idea to do this?
Well, it's funny actually, because when I was thinking of bringing a car with me, it had to fill certain criteria. It had to be something that I could afford to leave behind, because it wasn't worth shipping back. I couldn't afford it. It also had to be right-hand drive and stick. It had to be something that you couldn't get in the US. No matter who you are in the US, you cannot have that car unless you're a British citizen or a foreigner.
Right.
Because it's on a tourist entry, so it has to go back or be destroyed. So
your car has a visa?
Kind of. It can be here for 1 year.
Yeah, okay.
And then it has to exit or be formally imported, which it can't be.
Right.
Due to a rule that Uncle Sam set. But I picked that particular car, and it has a history with San Francisco. Because you remember Bullitt?
Yes.
When they introduced that particular car into the UK, into the European market, they filmed a commercial in San Francisco putting Steve McQueen in the car, which was the first time in history, I think, that anybody had ever really been able to superimpose a dead man from 30-year-old footage into a new car. And I mean, it was a really tall order, and only someone as big as Ford could really afford to do it. So they shipped a car over to San Francisco to film the bullet scenes in all the streets and everything else. And then the commercial went out in Europe, and they sold the car in Europe. They never sold the car here. So it's the only time a Ford Puma had ever been in the US. So I brought the first one back in 20 years, and of course, it was necessary to document that because from a car geek's
petrol heads, gearheads. So has Ford approached you? Does Ford know about this?
I think, well, I've been tweeting them, and their magazine, I think it's called My Ford, which is run by Time, have contacted me, and I've done an article with them, which will be published hopefully around the 20th anniversary of the launch of the car.
Right.
So when I got to San Francisco, it was necessary, I felt it necessary to film or just take pictures of the car in some of the locations that the very first Puma in the States was. Then all of my friends got involved, and they jumped on the bandwagon with cameras, and we refilmed the commercial. We sat in the living room working out, freeze-framing the YouTube film. It's only a minute long, I think.
Yeah.
You know, working out, oh, that's that street, and you know, oh, that's there. You can only get that view from there. And so we wrote everything down. There was a storyboard, and then we went out and shot over the course of a weekend. Right. It was great.
So what did you learn about yourself during this kind of, you know, a new Tocquevillian take on United States democracy with a Puma?
Well, it's interesting. Being here with that car opened my eyes a lot to how few Americans I have learned are able or get out of the States and see things. It's like me, I got the impression that I was bringing a bit of Europe to them, particularly in places like Kansas, Nebraska, a lot of the Midwest. You know, a lot of people seem not to travel so much, and they were particularly gearheads, and you know, people in petrol stations would see the car and they're like, oh, wow, I've never seen this before, the steering wheel on the other side and the British tags, and you know, so I got an impression that people were very excited to see something so unusual, to the point where I was actually a bit concerned for people's safety, because people would be snapping pictures whilst driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour, which is a bit nerve-wracking. But being here during the election, I think is the other part of the question, was really eye-opening, because someone like someone like Donald Trump wouldn't get as far in the UK because we have a vote of no confidence, and so he wouldn't get as far as he had. So it was quite incredible to see that somebody with money and with fame and stuff can move forward in these circles.
Yeah, but you know, having said that someone in Great Britain wouldn't get that far, do you see a relation between Brexit, we've only got a minute left, and the election of Donald Trump?
Yes, a little bit, because I think people that voted out to be out of the EU and people that voted in Donald Trump weren't necessarily all stupid, I don't believe, and a lot of people think that they are, but they were very tired of what had been happening and didn't really know how to get past it, and this seemed like another way out, which I think reminds me of kind of around 1930-something as well in another country.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of see the correlation of how people felt and why both things happened. You know, only time will tell, really. But, you know, I can't say I voted either myself.
10 seconds left. Any regrets? Would you do this trip again?
I would, with a film crew and some more money, probably.
Thanks. We've been speaking to Chris Behan, who just went around the country in a Ford Puma with the stick on the wrong side. I'm David Perry. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on 10%.